The night was loud inside the saloon, but quiet just outside its doors, like the world held two different lives, separated by a thin layer of wood and noise. Music clashed against laughter, glasses slammed against tables, boots dragged across the floor, and voices rose and fell in careless rhythm. It was the kind of place where people forgot things for a while, or tried to. But outside, under the dim lantern light, the street was nearly empty, dust shifting with the wind, the town settling into shadows. Jackson Cole stepped out of the saloon with a slow exhale, the noise cutting off behind him as the door swung shut. He rubbed his neck like the weight of the room still clung to him. He wasn't drunk, not even close. He didn't come here for that anymore. He came for information, for silence in the middle of noise, for anything that kept his thoughts from catching up to him. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of dirt and something distant. He adjusted his coat, stepping down from the wooden porch, his boots hitting the ground with a dull thud. He was halfway across the street when he heard it. At first he thought it was the wind again, something small and sharp lost in the dark. But then it came again, softer this time, unmistakable. A cry. Jackson froze, his head turning slowly toward the source. The sound came from near the side of the saloon, close to the stacked barrels where shadows gathered thicker. He moved without thinking, his steps careful but quick, his instincts already telling him something wasn't right. When he reached the corner, he saw it, a small bundle wrapped in a thin blanket lying against the wall, barely protected from the cold. The cry came again, weak, fragile, like it didn't have much strength left. Jackson's chest tightened as he crouched down, pulling back the edge of the blanket just enough to see. A baby, no more than a few weeks old, its face pale, its tiny hands trembling against the cold. He stared for a second longer than he should have, his mind trying to catch up to what he was seeing. Out here? At this hour? Left like this? The questions came fast, but none of them mattered as much as the one thing he knew for certain. If he left that child here, it wouldn't last the night. Jackson muttered something under his breath before carefully lifting the bundle into his arms. The baby stirred, letting out another small cry, but it quieted slightly against the warmth of his coat. He looked around the empty street, his eyes narrowing. "Where the hell did you come from?" he said quietly, though he didn't expect an answer. The saloon door creaked open behind him, spilling light and noise back into the night. Jackson turned slightly as a man stumbled out, laughing too loud, too careless. He glanced at Jackson, then at the bundle in his arms, his expression shifting from amusement to confusion. "That yours?" the man slurred. Jackson didn't bother answering. He just adjusted his grip on the baby, his mind already moving ahead. This wasn't random. Not in a town like this. Not in a place where nothing happened without someone knowing about it. He stepped away from the saloon, moving toward the quieter end of the street, his gaze sharp, scanning every shadow, every movement. The baby shifted again, its small face pressing closer against him, seeking warmth, seeking something it didn't understand. Jackson felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Not quite concern, not quite anger, but something close to both. He had seen a lot in his life. Bad things, worse things. But this didn't sit right, not even a little. He reached his horse, tying the reins loose enough to pull free quickly if needed. He hesitated for a moment, looking down at the child again. "You picked the wrong place to show up," he muttered softly. But even as he said it, he knew that wasn't true. This place had found the child, not the other way around. And whatever had brought it here wasn't finished yet. He swung himself up onto the horse, carefully keeping one arm steady around the bundle. The town stretched out ahead, quiet but not peaceful. There was something in the air, something waiting. And then he heard it again. Not a cry this time. Hoofbeats, more than one, fast approaching from the far end of the road. Jackson's eyes snapped up, his posture shifting instantly, the calm replaced with something sharper, more dangerous. He turned the horse slightly, angling toward the shadows between buildings as the sound grew louder, clearer. 4 riders, maybe 5, moving fast, not trying to hide it. Their silhouettes came into view against the faint glow of lanterns, long coats, dust trailing behind them. Jackson's jaw tightened. He didn't need to see their faces to know what they were. Gunmen. And they weren't just passing through. They were looking for something. Or someone. His gaze dropped briefly to the baby in his arms, and everything clicked into place. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't chance. The child hadn't been abandoned. It had been left behind. And now someone was coming back for it. Jackson pulled the reins gently, guiding the horse deeper into the shadows, his movements quiet, controlled. The riders slowed as they reached the saloon, one of them dismounting quickly, scanning the ground near the barrels. "It was here," the man barked, his voice sharp with urgency. "I told you it was here." Another rider dismounted, kicking at the dirt, frustration clear in his movements. "Then where is it?" Jackson stayed still, watching from the darkness, his grip tightening slightly around the child. The baby stirred again, letting out a faint sound, and he instinctively adjusted his coat to muffle it, his heart pounding once hard against his chest. This just got complicated. The men spread out quickly, their eyes scanning the street, their hands never far from their weapons. "Check every corner," one of them ordered. "We don't leave without it." Jackson exhaled slowly, his mind racing. He could ride out now, try to outrun them, but that would draw attention, make the child a target. He could stay hidden, wait it out, but something told him these men weren't the kind to give up easily, not when they were this determined. He looked down at the baby again, its tiny face pressed against him, unaware of the danger closing in. A choice settled in front of him, clear and unavoidable. He could walk away, leave the child somewhere else, let fate decide the rest. Or he could step in, fully knowing what that meant: trouble, danger, maybe worse. Jackson's jaw set. He had walked away from enough things in his life. This wasn't going to be one of them. He shifted slightly, adjusting his hold on the child, his eyes lifting back toward the street as the gunmen moved closer, their search tightening, their voices growing louder, more impatient. And in that moment, as the night held its breath around him, Jackson Cole made a decision that would change everything. He pulled the reins gently, guiding his horse deeper into the narrow alley between 2 buildings, the shadows swallowing him whole. The baby shifted slightly in his arms, letting out a faint sound, and Jackson immediately tightened his coat around it, shielding it from both the cold and the noise. "Easy now," he muttered under his breath, his voice lower than the wind. The hoofbeats behind him slowed, then stopped, followed by the sound of boots hitting dirt and wood as the gunmen spread out further into the town. Their voices echoed, sharper now, closer. "Find it," one of them snapped. "It couldn't have gone far." Jackson's eyes moved quickly, calculating every possible path, every exit, every risk. He couldn't stay here long. They would search every corner, every shadow, until they found what they were looking for. And if they found him with the baby, he didn't need to finish that thought. He nudged the horse forward slowly, keeping to the darkness, the alley opening toward the backside of the town, where fewer lanterns burned and fewer eyes watched. The baby stirred again, this time louder, a small cry breaking through the quiet. Jackson froze instantly, his breath stopping as he listened for any sign that the sound had carried. Footsteps paused somewhere behind him. A voice called out, "You hear that?" Another answered, "Just the wind, keep moving." Jackson exhaled slowly, relief brief but not lasting. He looked down at the child, its tiny face scrunched, its cry building again. He shifted his grip, awkward but careful, rocking slightly the way he had seen others do, though he had never done it himself before. "Not now, kid," he whispered, almost pleading. The baby quieted just enough, and he took that chance, urging the horse forward again until the town began to fade behind him. The open land stretched ahead, dark and endless, but safer than the streets crawling with men who had made their intentions clear. He didn't stop riding until the lights of the town were nothing more than distant flickers behind him. When he finally slowed the horse, the silence hit differently out here. Not empty, but wide. He dismounted carefully, his boots crunching softly against the dirt, before tying the reins loosely to a low branch nearby. The baby shifted again, and this time Jackson looked down at it longer than before. Really looking. The small, fragile life in his arms had turned his night upside down, dragged him into something he hadn't asked for, and couldn't walk away from anymore. "You've got a way of causing trouble, don't you?" he said quietly, though there was no real edge in his voice now. He moved toward a small, abandoned shack, not far from where he had stopped. It wasn't much, barely standing, but it offered cover, and right now that was enough. Inside it was cold and dark, but dry. He knelt down carefully, placing the baby on a folded piece of cloth he found nearby, then quickly set to work building a small fire. His movements efficient, practiced. Within minutes, a faint warmth began to fill the space. The baby stirred again, its cries softer now, but still there. Jackson sat back for a moment, watching it, unsure what came next. He had faced men with guns, storms that tore through land and life, situations that would break most people. But this was different. He leaned forward, slowly reaching out, hesitating before finally adjusting the blanket around the child more securely. The crying eased slightly. Jackson let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. He sat there longer than he intended, the fire crackling softly between them, his eyes never leaving the small figure in front of him. His mind ran through possibilities, none of them good. The men back in town weren't going to stop. They had come for the baby, and they would keep coming until they got it. The question was, why? And more importantly, what would they do if they did? That answer he didn't want to find out. A sound outside broke his thoughts, sharp, sudden. Jackson's head snapped up instantly, his body going still. He reached for his gun quietly, his eyes fixed on the doorway. The wind shifted, carrying something with it. Footsteps. Not many, but enough. His jaw tightened. They had tracked him faster than he expected. He stood slowly, positioning himself between the door and the baby, his grip firm on the weapon as the footsteps drew closer, then stopped just outside. Silence. Then a voice. "We know you're in there." Jackson didn't respond. His eyes flicked briefly toward the baby, then back to the door. The voice came again, this time colder. "You've got something that doesn't belong to you." Jackson's grip tightened. "Funny thing about that," he replied finally, his voice calm but edged. "Looks like it didn't belong out there either." A pause. Then the door creaked open slightly, a man stepping into view, his hand resting near his gun, his expression hard, calculating. "You don't want to make this difficult," the man said. Jackson didn't move, didn't lower his weapon. "Seems like you already did." The man's eyes flicked briefly past him, catching sight of the small bundle near the fire, and something dark passed through his expression. "Hand it over," he said simply. Jackson's stance didn't change. Not happening. The tension in the room snapped tight enough to break. The man stepped forward slightly, his voice dropping. "You don't know what you're dealing with." Jackson's eyes hardened. "I know enough." Another step, closer now. "That child isn't yours." "Doesn't seem like it's yours either," Jackson shot back. The man's jaw flexed, his patience thinning. "Last chance." Jackson didn't hesitate. "No." Everything happened fast after that. A hand moved toward a weapon. A shot rang out, loud, sharp, filling the small space. The man stumbled back, hitting the doorframe before collapsing outside. The others reacting instantly, voices shouting, boots shifting, weapons drawn. Jackson moved just as quickly, grabbing the baby, wrapping it tight against him, before slipping out the back through a narrow opening in the shack, the night swallowing him again. He ran for the horse, mounting in one smooth motion as another shot cracked through the air behind him, kicking up dirt near his feet. He didn't look back. He didn't slow down. He rode hard into the darkness, the wind tearing past him, the child held close against his chest as the sound of pursuit followed not far behind. But something had changed now. This wasn't just about staying alive anymore. This was about protecting something that couldn't protect itself. And Jackson Cole wasn't the kind of man who backed down once he made a choice. The chase stretched into the night, the distance between him and the gunmen shifting, but never fully disappearing. He knew this wouldn't end easily, knew this was only the beginning of something bigger than he had stepped into. But as he rode deeper into the unknown, with the child in his arms, one thing became clear. He wasn't just running anymore, he was fighting. And this time he wasn't fighting for himself. He was fighting for a life that had been left to die, and a future neither of them had expected, but both were now bound to face together.